U.S. President Donald Trump has just announced on social media that the USA will continue to be the leading force in Bitcoin and crypto. How crazy is that? We see the president here, who wants to keep pushing the price of Bitcoin higher. I told you, the phase of pushing prices down, of price suppression, could be over now. And now comes the Valhalla phase, where all the big players are driving prices up. BlackRock takes it a step further and says it's soon going to be risky not to hold Bitcoin. Guys, what a time to be alive. It's unbelievable what we're witnessing unfold right before our eyes. All of this is happening in a very, very positive sentiment, with a very, very good market situation, with a very, very good price situation, and we could easily climb much higher at any moment. It doesn't take much now to keep pushing the Bitcoin price even higher. We also now have a court decision in the US that Donald Trump is not allowed to remove Jerome Powell from office. That's also very, very interesting, because there's always speculation about manipulating interest rates, lowering them even further. Now it could be that Donald Trump suffers a setback on this front for the time being. But first, and most importantly, go ahead and smash that like button. For Bitcoin to keep this upward trend going, we need every bit of support we can get. So hit that subscribe button too, if you haven't already, so we can really break through here. These videos really need to reach even more people now. It's already pretty good, but it needs to get even bigger. Anthony Pompliano says here that we've just had the gold rush, and next up is Bitcoin. And that's not a new statement. If you've been following this channel closely, I said this almost a month ago. I said, guys, there's going to be a shift. The gold rally won't be the driving force anymore. Now we're going to see the shift from gold to Bitcoin. And that's exactly what happened, just like I said. So I said it, and then it happened just like that. How do you say it? Said and done? Or said and played out? I don't know. Ordered and delivered. You could probably put it that way. And honestly, you really didn't have to be Nostradamus or anything like that to see it coming. That's what some people always think, you know? You really don't have to. For example, when people like Max Kaiser already said 10 years ago that, yeah, nation states will buy Bitcoin. First gold will rally, and then Bitcoin will follow. I mean, you really don't have to be Nostradamus to see that. You just have to be able to put 2 and 2 together. You don't have to be completely stuck in a Bratwurst coma. You just need to have your synapses somewhat under control. Maybe not completely stoned, not totally drunk or wasted or anything like that. Then it is enough to simply pull out such keys here. And yeah, next up will be the Bitcoin rally, and then things like this will happen. Like Donald Trump, who not long ago said he couldn't care less about the stock markets. He wasn't paying attention to the stock markets. He wasn't looking at the markets at all. So what happened next? Next, he said, hey, now is the time to get in. Now is the time to watch the markets. And I said, guys, whenever Donald Trump says that, we've always seen historically that prices go up. So what happened? The prices went up. And now he's taking it a step further. Now he's making it very clear that the US will continue to be the leader here, the dominant force in crypto, Bitcoin, ETH, and so on. We are going to keep it that way. And that's how it's going to stay. And he's saying this because he's on his way to the crypto dinner in Loudoun County, Virginia, in a little while. This is, of course, very, very bullish, and it means that Donald Trump wants to pump up the price of Bitcoin. We know he's very, very well invested in Bitcoin. He has a strong incentive to pump Bitcoin up. And what did I tell you here as well? Look at the incentives. Check what motives people have. And if we look, Donald Trump has had the incentive to pump up Bitcoin the whole time. The entire administration here in the US as well. Howard Lutnick and so on. They're loaded up, big time. By now, we also know from multiple sources that Donald Trump has massive Bitcoin allocations. We don't know all the exact allocations, but we do know that they're seriously in the game. And that's always the thing. If you want to understand how people work, if you want to understand how societies work, just look at what the incentives are. If the incentives are there for someone to put money into Bitcoin, then people are going to do it. If the incentives are such that people want to leave Germany, then people are going to do that too. In Germany, for example, the incentives are set up so that the rich are taxed, wealth is taxed, work isn't really encouraged, and, for example, laziness is actually promoted. And what happens then? We end up with a bunch of people just chilling on welfare. And all the wealthy people, all the rich folks, the high achievers and so on, they all end up leaving the country. By the way, on May 28th, I'm also hosting the next immigration webinar, where we'll talk about the best ways to leave Germany, the best ways to get out of the EU, and how to do all this to build more wealth abroad, basically by taking advantage of lower taxes in other countries or finding a better destination with less bureaucracy, less stress, and so on. If you're interested in checking it out, feel free to take a look below. I'll put a link for you down there. But we were still talking about Donald Trump and how there are now signs, just like in the past, that have always led to either prices dropping or just going up. That means he was already able to influence the markets to some extent. I'm not saying he can completely control the Bitcoin market, but he definitely has some influence. You have to admit that. What Elon Musk was in the last cycle, Donald Trump kind of is in this cycle. And just take a look at this. The science couldn't be clearer. What a time to be alive. BlackRock is saying here that soon it will be riskier not to hold Bitcoin than to hold it. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure where they said that, whether there was a new speech or if it was an old statement or something like that. But of course, it absolutely hits the nail on the head. BlackRock. Yeah, they're calling the shots too. BlackRock knows how things work around here. By the way, BlackRock also has the incentive to pump up the price of Bitcoin. And if they do that, or if they have the incentive to do so, then maybe you shouldn't bet against BlackRock, not against the USA, and not against Bitcoin. I mean, you can always do that if you want, but it usually doesn't end well. Otherwise, you'll end up like this fool here who says, I know Bitcoin is going to zero. And he posted this 3 months ago, and just look at how many views it has. Bitcoin videos with 500,000 views. Guys, it can't be that someone like this fool here, or me, well, fool, I don't really want to insult him or anything, but I think fool isn't really an insult. That simply means that she can't add 1 and 1 together here. It just can't be that someone like that gets 500,000 views, while our videos only get, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000, 10,000 views. So you definitely need to keep pushing these videos, so that scammers, crypto guys, and whoever else don't end up selling you some nonsense, like saying Bitcoin is going to zero. And of course that kind of thing gets clicks, because it's a crazy headline and all that. But you also have to stick to the facts, and I read recently that a lot of crypto people have now come out, for example, revealing that influencers are being paid by certain crypto projects. I can also be completely transparent with you about this. Every day I get all those damn emails from all the AI projects, AI tokens, this token, that token, whatever token. And just so you believe me, I actually went into my email inbox, and if I just look at the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 requests, for example, I have a collaboration request for Kodak. Kodak? Really? It makes absolutely no sense for me to advertise for Kodak right now. Now, I wouldn't call the first one scammers just yet, but it's definitely very, very strange. Here, your chance to be part of the H&M styling campaign. No idea. They want to get me involved in something again, somewhere. Then here, Save Pollex 1 wallet promotion opportunity. I just opened this one up. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Here, we pay this much money. Here's the next email, paid promotion. If I take part in this and share it, I'll get some cash out of it too. I don't know the details here. Normally, I don't even look at the details. I don't even open the emails anymore. Here's the next email, and so on. Everything here is paid promotions. Everything that's being shared here. And these emails, for example, the ones you just saw, there weren't any big numbers in them. I skimmed through them quickly, but sometimes they just throw money at you, saying, hey, here, take $10,000. Just do a quick shout out, promote my meme coin or something, my gambling coin or my AI coin or whatever. And you really have to be careful if any influencers are trying to sell you some kind of crypto token or something like that. Often, these are paid ads. And of course, they say, hey, this is the top coin. But that's not their own conviction. They're just doing it because they're getting paid for it. That's why it's important to support Bitcoin-only channels, not some crypto scammers. But people still fall for it because they're promised things like, yeah, put in €1 here and you'll get 10,000 euros back, and so on. It's all just a huge scam that's going on in the whole crypto space. That's why I'm so glad to be focused only on Bitcoin and not to be caught up in the whole crypto jungle. And the bigger you get, the more followers you have, the more requests you get, and the higher the prices become. And at some point, people get weak and say, okay, I'll turn down 10,000, I'll turn down 50,000, 100,000, but eventually I say yes. And all those Mr. Beasts and so on, they do it the same way. They end up promoting all kinds of toxic foods and so on, which end up misleading all the kids. That's not sustainable at all. You shouldn't just base your whole life around money. I mean, it's always good to make money. It's always awesome to make money. I also get affiliate commissions if someone buys a hardware wallet here, or if someone shops at 20 and Bitcoin and so on. Support 20 and Bitcoin, support TREZOR. Use my affiliate links. I always get a cut from that. I have to be transparent about that. But these aren't scam companies, and it's not like I don't know. If you buy a hardware wallet through my link, I get maybe 10 euros or something like that. I'm not getting tens of thousands of dollars, but that's because these aren't scam projects. They're solid projects. They're open source. And you could even verify for yourself if everything checks out and so on. But enough ranting for now. Now let's move on to the Supreme Court in the USA. And in any case, Donald Trump wanted to, let's say, sue the Fed or at least kick Jerome Powell out of his position. Now there's actually a report on this from Nick Timiamos. He's kind of an insider at the Fed, and he always has the most exclusive info when it comes to the Fed. And he says the Supreme Court says that the Fed operates differently here. In this context, I think that's a bad translation. In any case, it means that it's definitely not possible. I actually had ChatGPT help me summarize and translate this. So, in the post it simply says, Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, can't just be fired like that. That's what the court is saying here, even if President Trump is allowed to try that with other government agencies. The Supreme Court, SCOTUS, has decided Trump is allowed to fire the heads of other independent agencies, like the NLRB and MSPB, without giving any reason, but not at the Fed, because the Fed is a specially structured, semi-private institution with a unique historical role, similar to the first U.S. central banks in the 18th and 19th centuries. That means the Fed is different. It is legally shielded. That protects Jerome Powell and future Fed chairs from being directly fired by the president. And that's why, yes, it's very, very interesting with the Fed here. It was kind of clear from the start that it wouldn't work. I mean, the Fed has been a monopoly of power since 1913, or was it 1911? I think the Fed was founded in 1913, or maybe 1911. I'm not really sure anymore. If you want to look it up exactly, Benny Mutlack wrote a book about it. All the details are in there. But in any case, since then it's basically been like its own state, its own institution, one that pretty much stands above the law. That means, really, there's only one institution above the Fed, and that's the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlement. That one is above the Fed, but otherwise, no one else really comes close. Otherwise, no one can hold a candle to the Fed. On the one hand, you could say it's good that there's still a certain level of independence. On the other hand, these are shadow regimes that can do whatever they want. And of course, they've been manipulating money here for centuries, not to your benefit, but to your disadvantage. That's why it's so important to get into Bitcoin and start learning about it now. I'm not saying you should buy Bitcoin, but you should definitely look into it. Make sure you're well prepared here. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, check out 20 and Bitcoin below. I'll put the link there for you. It's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe, and with the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can save up to 20% on fees. And if you haven't signed up yet, make sure to do it now. Here for the on May 28th for the next live webinar. If you want more freedom, if you want more self-sovereignty, if you want to get more out of your portfolio, in other words, if you want to save even more money and use it to buy Bitcoin, then I'll show you how that works too. For example, it works by moving to a country where you're not taxed as heavily, where you're simply treated better. Go where you're treated best. If you want to know what options are available, just write them down below. Everything is completely free of charge. See you soon. Until then, peace out.